What was your first year here in Bradenton, Jim?
I came here in 1986 as a manager of the Pirates, and believe me, this stadium looked nothing like this at the time. In fact, it was probably the worst stadium in Florida at the time. And the opposing teams, in a lot of cases, would not even take infield practice or batting practice in some cases on the field because it was so rough. And now it's turned into one of the most beautiful stadiums in the country. And the city of Bradenton and the Pittsburgh Pirates has obviously done a wonderful job. But it was tough sledding back in those days.
Well, it's been a relationship for over 50 years, I believe. And I love the fact that they use the LECOM field at McKechnie Park still. They keep, the honor Bill McKechnie and the whole group. But there's not a more, I don't think, authentic, historic ambiance type stadium in the Grapefruit League, because the fans are still right on top of you here. And I think the views are outstanding. What they've done here at the boardwalk and the bleachers in left field. Again, how many times did you sit back there in that dugout and there was about room for like 12 people?
Yeah, there was about room for 24. I'll never forget my first year managing. I had been a minor league manager all my life. So coming to the big leagues, I wasn't really sure what to expect. When you're in the minor leagues, you only have 22 players on your team. I managed AAA. I had 22 players. So the first game I ever managed in this very ballpark was against my good friend Tony La Russa and the Chicago White Sox. And I was sitting on the bench I was managing, and Bill Verdon, the Quail, one of the great center fielders of all time for the Pirates, was one of my coaches. I asked him to come with me as a coach to help me out. So about the seventh inning, we were behind 3-2. And I got a guy on first base. And I was mumbling to myself. I said, I'd really like to pinch run here, but I don't want to waste a player. And Bill Verdon looked at me and he said, Jim, you got 60 guys sitting here. It's okay. Go right ahead and use it. You can do that. So that was my first experience at the old McKechnie Field.
We were also reminiscing. You managed 22 years in the big leagues.
I did.
It's hard to manage 22 years in the big leagues unless you're really, really good at managing. And we talked about some of the events that happened for you. Detroit, Pittsburgh, Florida at the time. The highs and lows, maybe a high and a low in each one of those respective places.
Well, I'll start with Colorado, which Clint didn't manage, which we both managed.
Shame on me.
We both managed Colorado as well as the Pirates. Obviously, Clint did a little better job in Colorado than I did. But it was very unique because I still had a chance in Colorado, even though I did not do a very good job there. I still had the chance to manage two Hall of Fame players, Larry Walker, who's a baseball Hall of Famer, and Todd Helton, who I happened to go into the Hall of Fame with the same year. So that was quite a thrill. You talk about a high and low, it had to be the Florida Marlins. In 1997, we won the World Series. I was there 2 years. And after we won the World Series, Mr. Huizinga decided to sell the team. And the very next year, we lost 104 games after winning the World Series. So you talk about a high and low, that's a real high and low. And in Detroit, it was a great run in Detroit. We got to the World Series twice. We did not win it. We won 2 American League pennants. And I guess the biggest disappointment was that we didn't get Mr. Ilitch a world championship. That was very important. And then last but not least, and probably my most important, because the Pirates gave me my first opportunity of anybody to manage in the big league. And the high and low of that was we won 3 straight division titles, but did not get by the Atlanta Braves. And that was a big disappointment because the city of Pittsburgh was really booming about Pirate baseball. Clint experienced that in the 2000 teens when he took his team to the playoff. And we know what that's all about in Pittsburgh when you win. So it was disappointing, but so many great memories. In fact, you might not even know this. Clint and I actually coached together. When I managed the Rockies, Clint was a coach. And did Clint Hurdle coach for you? I said, no, he coached with me. I never had a coach who coached for me. I had coaches who coached with me. So that's basically a little bit of my story.
Well, now that you mention that, I actually took some notes. And I'm going to share a couple facts about Jim Leyland that you probably don't know. In 1998, the year he mentioned, Jim asked me to be a part of his staff as he came into Colorado. And he put the trust and expressed his confidence in a hitting coach that had only been there 2 years and actually took a hitting coach that he'd had for him in Pittsburgh, Milt May, and turned him into a pitching coach to keep me on staff. I have no idea the thought process that may have gone into that. I figured I was probably on the way out. I can remember a phone call Jim gave to me that I want you to be here. We want you to be here. I can't tell you how much confidence that put in me as a young coach, 42 years old maybe at the time, to be on Jim Leyland's staff and to work with that group of guys. If I take the door there and exit, I don't know what happens the rest of my career. You don't know. So personally, I've thanked him before, but I'm going to thank him again that he threw me a lifeline. And it turned out to be a pretty valuable lifeline for myself in my professional career. Now, 1979, he has no idea where I'm going with this. Where were you in 1979?
In 1979, I was managing the Evansville Triplets in the American Association.
I can't tell you what I did last week. Jim can tell you. We were sitting over here. He's telling me Game 7 of the 2000. I'm like, what? What? But he was in Evansville. We were coming into Evansville. I had had a year in the big leagues in 1978. The Tigers had drafted a really good college player at 77. 78, he was in Lakeland. 79, they brought him to Evansville. I was a phenom that couldn't miss, that had missed. I was back in AAA in 79. We were coming. I had a manager that loved me so much, he made me come to the park at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon whenever the other team got off the field for early work. And I can remember the first time walking into that stadium, and I see this guy in the outfield. It looked like Tarzan. Jimmy's hitting them balls. He's throwing the bases. He's sliding. He's working. Then he comes in to hit. Jimmy throw. I must have spent 45 minutes with one player, one coach. And then my manager, Gordy McKenzie, was going to do the same thing with me. But I can remember Jim working with this guy in 1979. From that point on, it etched on me, that guy's different. And what you don't know about Jim Leyland is all those days in the minor leagues that he put in, the work before he even became a major league manager, the people he invested in, the people he cared about, the people he poured his heart out to. And you don't know if they're going to get to the big leagues. You have no clue. Well, he may have known this guy was going to get to the big leagues. Kid's name was Kirk Gibson.
Yeah, he turned out pretty good. It's kind of a funny story that a lot of people would not know this. I was Kurt Gibson's first manager when he signed out of Michigan State. He was the #1 draft pick. But at the time, they took out an insurance policy on Kurt Gibson, and they let him go back to Michigan State to play his senior year of football. And he was actually drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals, a very high pick, who said he was the best receiver in the draft that year. But he chose baseball. So I was Kurt Gibson's first manager. Lo and behold, several years later, as manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates, we made a trade for Kurt Gibson, and I eventually released him. I had to release Kurt Gibson. And I'll never forget somebody asking me, was it tough to manage or release a superstar like Kurt Gibson? And I said, no, it was not. And they were shocked when I gave that answer. And my reasoning was, Kurt Gibson had been a World Series champion. He had been an MVP. It was tough to manage release some kid 18 years old that you had to shatter his dream and tell him that he was never going to be a major league player. That was a tough guy to release. But releasing a guy that made all kinds of money, that was an MVP and a superstar, it really wasn't that hard.
We know Jim spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh. I spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh. There's a saying about the city that I really didn't understand when I first came in, but I was the best man at a friend's wedding, a Yinzer's wedding, full-blown Yinzer wedding in Pittsburgh. When he asked me to be his best man, I was a hitting coach for the Rangers in 2010. The time of his wedding, I was the manager for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and for my buddy to have the manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates as his best man kind of blew the top off things in a Yinzer's mindset. But they had a saying that night. They said, we are rough around the edges, but we're soft where it counts. Did you find that to be true when you were in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I found it to be true. It's a very passionate city. It's a well-kept secret. I don't know if any of you have ever been there. They used to talk about, the coal and the industry there and the steel and everything. But it's really become a little bit more of a sophisticated town, but it's a small town. It's groups of ethnic people that are very friendly. very heartwarming people. It's a great place, and like I said, if you ever get a chance to visit there, believe me, it's worth it. And if you ever get a chance to go to a Pittsburgh Steeler game, go.
Go see the Steelers. Go see the Penguins. One of the perks sometimes of being a former major league manager in a city, we were there just 3 weeks ago, and I asked for some tickets from a friend. You know, you hate to do it, but you kind of know you can. And the administrative assistant for the general manager said, yes, Clint, we've got tickets for you and Carla and your friend. Well, as we go in, we walk in the door, and I see this grown man. One of the most beautiful men I've ever seen in my life, up close. It was Mario Lemieux. I spent the night watching a hockey game with Mario Lemieux. Now, you just can't make those kind of things up. Those experiences don't happen very often. Were you ever caught off guard? I did. I had a man crush the whole night. I was just, this guy's 60 years old. He's cut. He's ripped. I just tried to keep my wife away from him, keep his attention on the game. Did you ever run into somebody that you maybe looked at and go, wow, well, that's special?
It's funny that you say that, because my time in Pittsburgh was a lot of the time that Mario Lemieux was there, and when the Penguins were really good, and when they were winning Stanley Cups with Yager and Tom Barrasso and Paul Coffey and all that group. So that was a thrill to me. But it's funny because I was at the Pittsburgh Pirates game this year, and somebody came down. I was sitting way down at the end of the stadium in a box because I still work for the Tigers. And I was sitting in a box down there, and somebody came and got me, and they said, come on, I want to take you down to this box. I want you to meet somebody. And I went down, and it was Sidney Crosby wanted to meet me, and I was so flattered and so touched, I couldn't believe it. I was kind of starstruck, a little embarrassed, to be honest with you. I'm 80 years old, and here I'm looking at this guy kind of starstruck. But that was one of the big thrills for me and a big surprise. I got the opportunity to meet Sidney Crosby. I knew Mario very well, and some of the Penguin players in those days. I knew those guys real good because that was the same time I was there. But to meet Sidney Crosby was a big thrill for me.
Well, they're passionate fans in Pittsburgh, passionate fans everywhere. But I will share this with you, see if you agree with me on this. The most miserable city in the United States of America on a Monday morning after a football team's loss is in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, there's no question about that. It's definitely Steeler country. But at one time, the old owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Art Rooney, old Art Rooney, was actually a baseball fan. He liked baseball better than football in his early days. And then, of course, he became the owner of the Steelers, and the Rooneys still run the operation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Art Rooney originally was a big baseball guy.
Ginger's up, so I'm going to tighten this up. I've got two more spots I'd like to make. I think they're important to mention. Ejections.
Yeah, there we go.
You've seen him. I mean, all you got to do is YouTube Jimmy Leyland ejections, and there's a bunch. 73 of them, to be exact. Tied for 10th all time with Clark Griffith. I didn't know Clark Griffith was a red ass. I knew you were.
I had no idea, but I don't really think 74 is that much for 22 years. I don't really think it's all that bad, but I did have my moments. I will promise you that.
Well, now to put it in context, 22 years, 74, right? Then there's a guy down here tied for 14th with Bill Rigney and Lou Piniella. Now, we know about Sweet Lou, don't we? Have you ever seen Sweet Lou throw down? Well, the other kid's name is Clint Hurdle. 64 lifetime ejections in only 17 years.
You were a bad boy.
So if we prorate those out, well, I wasn't good enough to manage any longer, but I might have gotten more than you if I'd have managed about 5 more years. My last point. I don't know if anybody here, if you know Katie, you know more about Jim than most, because Katie has been to Jim what Carla has been to me throughout my life. You run into somebody at some time that just changes everything. Whatever you were doing, you don't do it the same way. You know, you may do your job, but a lot of things in life change. Katie changed things for Jim. Katie's changed things for a lot of people. My wife Carla's changed things for me. She's changed things for a lot of people. Let me tell you something Jim did for my wife and I through a random act of kindness. We have a daughter named Madison. Madison is now 23 years old. Madison was born with a birth defect. Prader-Willi syndrome. Doesn't go away. She's 23. Most of her's 12. Will always be 12. Jim had gotten to know Madison. Katie had gotten to know Madison. Jim wrote our daughter Madison a congratulations graduation card the year she graduated in 2020 and sent her a check just like a fine uncle, rich uncle would do. And it took us almost 6 months to get Maddie to cash the check. I said, girl, that much money, you can't just hold on to that. You gotta go get something. But out of there's a guy here that you don't know. And I'm just asking you, if you get a chance tomorrow night, make sure you applaud all of them, because there's a side to all these Hall of Famers that you haven't seen. You've seen the side that's getting honored, but there's another side to them that's pretty special and significant. This man has made a difference in my life. He's made a difference in the lives of a lot of other people. I want to thank him personally, but then I want you to tell one more story on the way out. You can take it wherever you want to go. I love your stories.
Well, I was sitting in my office when I first got the Pittsburgh Pirates job, and this happened very often. It was in Pittsburgh, and I'd be sitting there by myself early afternoon getting ready for the game. The manager always gets there before everybody else, and I would look up. I wouldn't hear anybody come in, and I wouldn't see anybody come in. I was focused on what I'm doing, and I looked up, and there was old Art Rooney Sr., the owner of the Steelers, sitting in a chair, not saying a thing. And I looked up. He said, "Don't worry, kid, you're going to be okay." And I was totally shocked, and I'm thinking, like, what's he talking about? He said, "Listen, I hired a coach that won one game his first year and lost 13 straight. And he's on his way to winning his 4th Super Bowl, Chuck Noll." And I'll never forget the confidence that he gave me. Somebody of that magnitude taking the time to come in and really talk to a minor league manager that just became a major league manager. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. And I want to thank each and everybody. I want to thank Clint, obviously. I want to thank everybody that came out here tonight. First of all, for having us. I want to thank everybody for this wonderful honor. And I hope I get a chance to maybe spend a little more time with each and every one of you tomorrow night to say hello. But thank you so much for your time and coming out here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. That was wonderful. One more round of applause for all of our inductees. Look forward to celebrating you tomorrow night. And now we can get back to the music. Thank you.